Hey friends, so for today's ad lib, I want to talk about public life, about being a public individual, about doing things in public, about what my theory or hypothesis about public life, public engagement is. So I'm not super academic about this. I'm a practitioner. I would say I have experiences from doing it, and I have lots of thoughts and ideas about how I do it. I think I'm pretty good at it, and I don't think it's for everyone. So I want to be careful to be clear that when I talk about these things, I'm not saying that everybody should be as public as I am. I think maybe 1% of people should be as public as I am. But I think that there are benefits that you can have and you can create for others as well by being public. And I'm just going to riff a bit about my experiences as a so-called tiny micro public figure, and maybe a bit about my goals and ambitions and how I think about these things. So backstory, which I have talked about in several videos at this point, but I'm just going to keep talking about these things until it sticks. Until it sticks. I'm just gonna keep talking about these things until it feels like it's not necessary anymore, I guess. So I am a Singaporean. I am a very tall, dark-skinned Singaporean with a unique name, and so I think from a very young age, I've always felt like I didn't have much of a choice in getting public attention. And when you're young, when I was young, my concept of public attention was, my schoolmates, my classmates, just people around me. I just never felt like I could hide. And, I've spoken to other people over the years, and sometimes they say things like, just like, if you're nervous or shy or uncertain, just keep your head down and try and blend into the crowd. I can't do that. I don't have the option of blending into a crowd. So I get called on a lot, like in school, for example. Like there have been multiple instances where I've been called out in front of the whole school for doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. It's just I can't hide, right? So from a very young age, I've had to always learn to handle public attention and public scrutiny. And I'm not sure if, like, sometimes I wonder, like, is that my natural state? Am I actually, and if I look at like photos of myself when I was a kid, I was a very bookish child. I used to, if everybody left me alone, I would be happy to just like hide at the back of the class and read books and not be disturbed. But I would always get disturbed, so I had to. It just was a part of my life that I had to contend with. And I think for a period of time, maybe when I was a teenager, I didn't fully appreciate that different people have different experiences about these things. I sort of just assumed that everyone, that if people are going to call on you all the time and you're going to be receiving attention all the time, then your kind of cost benefit analysis of a lot of things gets influenced by that. And so I don't know when specifically I thought this, but at some point I kind of, without explicitly thinking about it, I became a person who, one, kind of assumed that people are interested in me, which I think is something I have that's different from another class of public figure where there are people who, they want attention for good or bad reasons. It doesn't really matter. They want attention, and they are not as confident, like fundamentally confident as I am that they will receive it. And so they can get a little bit maybe defensive about the idea of courting attention. So I do things that court attention, but I don't do it from a place of the way I approach it. I think it's a bit different. It's up to different people will have different ideas about how true that is. But to me, it feels self-evident. To me, it feels self-evident that no matter what I do, I will receive public attention for it. So I might as well, if the spotlight's gonna be on me, then I might as well use it in ways that are good, or you just use it in ways that serve my goals, my intentions, my needs, right? And, so I have a unique name. So if you Google me, you'll only find me. There's nobody else. There's no other Visagan Viraswamy in the world, as far as I know. And, if there is one, he is pretty lucky, if he wants to be anonymous, he's pretty lucky because everyone's just going to find me. And so that has shaped my thinking and my beliefs and the way I conduct myself. And what else? Yeah, and I guess also, again, being a minority and feeling like I've never had my own personal, private in-group that I can trust to take care of me and my interests. There's no table for me to go and sit at. I've always felt this need to brick by brick build a psychological home of other people and space. I want to talk about this essay I once read. I can't remember the author, but it's this idea that public intellectuals create publics by the work that they do. So, if you write a book, for example, everybody who reads that book then has a shared understanding. They have a shared interest, and you can make assumptions about the kind of people who read a certain book. Just take any book. Let's say Atomic Habits by James Clear, right? It's a book about building better habits to be more productive and, to get rid of bad habits, to build good habits. And, it's technically kind of a very... I haven't read it, but I'm assuming it's similar to his blog posts, and that there's a kind of worldview that is implied from the book, right? And then you can assume that if you have an event in public or if you have a subreddit, or if you have like people on Twitter who share that they read the book and other people can find it, then you create a kind of impromptu ad hoc community around the book, where people in that community can make assumptions about other people who have read the book and what their values are and what they care about and what they want out of life. They are probably a little bit more scientific minded. They're probably a little bit more, metrics driven. They're probably, kind of logical, analytical, right? Like, so you can kind of make assumptions about people who like this will also like that, right? And I find that to be a very compelling thing. Like, it's compelling to me that if you create a body of work, audiences will self-select into that. Audiences of that body of work, when they congregate, they function as a tribe, potentially, like a community, your people, right? So for me, making things in public has always been my way of finding my people. And, I didn't have my people growing up, so I had to seek my people out in the world. And so that's kind of part of why I'm so passionate about participating in public. And I also think about how, like public schooling, for example, doesn't do an amazing job of educating people. And it's not realistic to expect it to, because it has limited resources. It has to satisfice for everybody. And so you have this kind of, like mainstream public life is not very well designed, or it's not very well framed. It's just not great. It's okay. So we have the phrase, the tragedy of the commons, which means that, everybody is kind of looking out for their own self-interest rather than the public interest or the communal interest, community interest. And so any space that is a commons space tends to kind of, it tends to be a race to the bottom. It tends to get overwhelmed by low quality feedback, input, responses. Like the worst actors don't care about anybody else. And so any public space tends to kind of go down to the lowest common denominator. I've seen this happen in online communities, multiple online communities. It basically happens to all online communities where, people come in and there's no clear... regular individuals are not very good at thinking about what is best for the common good. And which is tragic, and which is why we have the tragedy of the commons. And you could, I think it's not inaccurate to say that, as this kind of weirdo misfit outsider kid, I've always fantasized about a nourishing public space. And you can kind of go like really big and extreme about this, which is kind of like, I don't want to live in a world where I have to be selfish and looking out for my own interests all the time, and kind of suspicious of other people. I don't want to live in that world. And so I conduct myself in a way that seeks out good commons. And when I was a teenager and I didn't know what the world was going to be like, I was legitimately, even I would say, borderline suicidal sometimes, in the sense that I just don't want to live. I don't think the world is worth living in if not for public goods. And I think the existence of libraries and books, to me, is proof that there are people in the world who care. The existence of musicians, like people who play music, people who create art, people who write plays, they might do these things within a frame where they also have to care about, how am I going to put food on the table, and how am I going to pay the bills, and all those things. And yet, the fact that despite that, there are people in the world who try to do good things for other people, that motivates me to want to participate in the world, like to be a human amongst other humans in service of the species. I can do this at many different levels. So it goes all the way down to the individual level even. And when I was a teenager, I was very invested in the local music scene. I felt that the local music scene was a public good. It was a thing. It's made up of private individuals, sure, but people were coming together to share their music with each other, to connect, to get along, to try and share in this community experience where you are welcome, where you are safe, hopefully, where you can share your feelings with other people, and other people will share it with you. One of my favorite lyrics from a Paramore song is from the song My Heart, and she says, Hayley sings, "Sing us a song and we'll sing it back to you. We could sing alone, but what would it be without you?" Right? And that's beautiful. And I love Hayley Williams and her story, and she talks about how when she was a child, she felt so alone that she would, fantasize about being a part of a band. I think she would draw imaginary band members next to her, and she was so hesitant to come out as a solo artist. She finally did, which is amazing, which I highly recommend you check out Hayley's latest music. But she was so insistent on being a part of a band rather than being a solo artist, because she wanted that sense of belonging, right? The sense of community. And I relate to that tremendously. I have always wanted friends, and not just, people who are your friends because you went to the same school or you went to the same classes, kind of circumstantial friends. I've always wanted deep relationships with people who really resonate with me, who really feel what I feel and care about what I care about. And I'm hungry for this shit. I've been blessed in the past couple of years to meet dozens and dozens of people who resonate at the same frequency as me, and I have helped them find other people like that, and I've helped connect them to each other. And even if you look in the past few videos that I've done, if you look in the comments, you can see that there's the same sense of thoughtfulness and nuance that people are finding with each other. And I want to do that. I want to facilitate community, because if not, what are we doing here? What's the point of life if it isn't other people? If it is just to be, if it's just pleasure for yourself, if it's just, that's not satisfying. That it's not gonna heal you, it's not gonna fulfill you. That I say all these things at myself, really. I'm sure that there are different people who don't feel the same things that I do, and this stuff is not for them. It's everything I do is really a kind of beacon. I light beacons to help kind, friendly, ambitious nerds find each other. And I believe that is always worth doing, and that doing it it's just self-evident to me that it's worth doing. And, it's interesting and surprising to me sometimes that when I talk about these things, people say things like, I had never considered that you could do that. I had never considered that if I talk about my feelings on the internet, for example, I will get mocked for it. People will bully me and insult me and scold me and call me an attention whore and all those things. But, you could have 100 people doing that to you, which is unpleasant. But then you find one person who says, hey, I feel what you feel. I understand what you're saying. I get what you mean. I've been there. And like that one person that you meet and have built a relationship with, that one bit of connection is so much more powerful than all of the shit that you have to endure. And I think one of the reasons I sat down to make this particular video is to try and be honest about this, because I do bang the drum a lot that, hey, we can all be, friendly, ambitious nerds. We can all be public facing, and we can all put out things into the world and allow the world to come and find us. But I can't entirely in good faith, kind of advocate for that for everybody, because people, looking back, I have encountered a lot of frustrating experiences. I've had people call me a narcissist, which hurts my feelings a lot because I don't want to be. And I do recognize that some of my behaviors are similar to the way that narcissists behave. And I might make a separate video about narcissism, but, it's just a real narcissist wouldn't be upset at being called a narcissist, I think. Like, they might say, yes, you're right, or they might say, no, you're wrong, but they wouldn't be conflicted about it. They would have some self-image that is fixed, that they believe is correct, and then they will just roll over with it. I don't have that. I don't have a fixed self-image. I'm always modifying my self-image in I'm taking in new feedback. I'm considering alternate points of view. I'm internally conflicted about my point of view and my self-assessment. Like, I do spend time asking myself if I'm doing these things for the wrong reasons, if I'm doing it in an unhealthy way. And I recognize that, like, I will brush up against these things all the time, from time to time, all the time, periodically. Sometimes it happens several times in a row, and that really gets to me. Like, am I bad? Right? But I know that, even bad people doing bad things will receive positive feedback and responses from some people for whom their projections are somehow helpful in some way. So, you can always seek out information that confirms your biases and confirms what you want to believe, right? And I'm very aware of that, and I'm haunted by it sometimes, right? I try to manage it as effectively as I can. But overall, I do think that as a species, and it depends on who I'm talking to, right? If I'm talking to my fellow Singaporeans in Singapore, I feel like, hey guys, we can make Singapore such an exciting and beautiful country, and it's up to us. If I'm talking to like the artists and musicians, I say the same thing. If I could tap the mic and talk to the whole world, I would say the same thing, which is that we can make a better public, right? And part of that, a big part of that is we have to celebrate and incentivize pro-social, healthy, supportive behavior. We have to disincentivize bad actors. And another video I'm going to make is that we insufficiently penalize bad actors, because the consequences of bad actors go far beyond their actions. Like, once you know that there are some bad actors in an environment, everyone now has to be a little bit on their guard, and everyone has to worry that someone else might be a bad actor, which is, in the context of, let's say, like dating. Like, men should be more concerned about bad men, because the existence of a few bad men means that every woman then has to become concerned that every man might be a bad man, and there's no way of knowing for sure, right? So you have to clean your own house in a way, right? Like, people will say, that's not my problem, that's not my responsibility. Why should I have to care about what other men are doing when I'm a good guy, right? Why should I have to spend time and energy doing cleanup, right, effectively? And I'm trying to make the case that doing cleanup is not your obligation. Like, you weren't born on this earth to do cleanup, right? But you can do it, and it is a wholesome and nourishing thing to do. It is a joy to do cleanup, right? And I mean, it isn't intrinsic. It can be intrinsically a joy for some people. I don't think it's intrinsically a joy for me in of itself. I think for it to work, for you to feel good about doing cleanup in any environment, it has to connect to a worldview. It has to connect to something bigger that you're working on, such that even if the cleanup you do today doesn't, solve the problem, and indeed cleanup has to be done until the rest of time. But you have to see, for example, that when people see you doing cleanup, some of the people who see you doing it will appreciate it. Even if the system as a whole doesn't appreciate it, some people will appreciate it, and the relationships you build with those people will be so valuable, right? I sometimes say that, I am conflicted about, should I take the high road or the low road? Should I try to act in service of justice and righteousness and just trying to be a good person and trying to do good things? Like, what's the point if you're always going to lose and you're always going to get taken advantage of, you're always going to get made fun of? And on the other hand, if you play dirty, right, if you exploit people, manipulate people, mislead people, lie, compromise on your values or whatever, like, you can win so much, you can win all the time. But I've debated this internally all the time, and I still do it, but I kind of have a pretty clear sense of why the high road is better. And you can make grandiose moral reasons for it, but the real reason for me that's kind of grounded in everyday life is that the high road, or the good path, is the path of friends, and the low road, or the path of the dark side, right, the Darth Vader kind of perspective, is the path without friends. So it's the logic of violence, it's the logic of power, of domination, where you don't trust people, and so you dominate them so that they don't have a chance to hurt you, and you hurt them first, and so you always win. You can win, but what have you won? You become the king on the throne of the ashes, right? It's a sad life. Even if you win, it's a sad life. And it's better to lose, in my experience, it's better to lose alongside your companions who believe in you. And that's kind of a very, very grand, big picture, kind of abstract sense. In the specifics, you can also find that sometimes, these kind of social justice warriors, for example, they get into it for the wrong reasons. They are vindictive. They don't actually care about justice. They just want to kind of take their perspective and lord it over other people. And, people don't talk about this publicly very much, but in private, I hear about it all the time, which is that everyone has some friend who, went through some shit, real shit. They were abused, they were harassed, they went through some difficult things. And then, that created almost a narcissistic wound where that now becomes the frame that they impose on everybody else. And because they have some valid reason to be morally superior, for example, they then just behave like dicks to everybody else, and they just posture and lord over everybody else. And that's not good. That's damaging. It's not a good way to live. And people are nervous about calling them out because they and the thing about assholes, and even morally righteous assholes, as well as kind of vindictive, selfish, cruel assholes. Just the thing about assholes in general is that they are disproportionate in their retaliation, and so everyday ordinary people are careful not to kind of upset assholes, because when an asshole wants to screw you, they go all the way, and they really go over the top, and they make your life miserable, and they enjoy that. And so I said I was going to make that separate video, but it is relevant to publics, because I feel like public spaces are tyrannized by assholes, which is really just a small group of people, 1% of people, cause downstream of them is 70% to it's 80% of the pain, the damage, because people are so worried that bad actors will have their way, or will punish them, or be punitive. And it's never possible for a single good actor to kind of outsmart, outwit, and outplay a bad actor, because a good actor has to be vigilant all the time, whereas a bad actor has the cover of surprise, has element of surprise. They have cover, they can just choose to be an asshole when you least expect it, so the whole good guy with a gun, bad guy with a gun frame doesn't adequately address the fact that the bad guy with a gun has surprise, right? It's always harder to protect and secure and defend something than it is to attack it and tear it down. except by coordination, right? So the again, one of my big themes and principles is that we can do more together as a collective than we can do as individuals. And like, no one individual can do all the cleanup duty for everybody all the time, and they shouldn't have to do that. They should instead find partners, coordinate. And this is how you deal with assholes, even at a house party or at a bar or just anywhere where bad shit's going down and there's one person or a small group of people messing things up. Rather than fight them directly head on, which is it's like a valiant martyr thing to do, but your odds of success are pretty low. What you want to do is you want to coordinate with everybody else. You want to, like, so if you see someone kind of harassing someone on the train, like, you don't want to go up straight to them and confront them, because they might hit you, they might hurt you back, right? So you want to kind of look around at everybody else on the train and be like, hey, you guys seeing this? Are you guys seeing this? Can we as a can we all together shove that guy out, right? And not necessarily in a violent or aggressive way, but really, can we get in between the harasser and the person that they're harassing? Can we diffuse the tension by centering the victim and talking to the person? Like, I saw one, like, there's a comic about, like, someone harassing a woman, and then another person comes along and asks the woman, hey, how are you? Have you watched this movie recently? It seems like irrelevant stuff, but what it does is it gives that person a chance to look away from the aggressor and talk to the new stranger. And then that kind of, now the aggressor is kind of on the outside, and the cost of their aggression increases. And more often than not, they kind of, like, when you diffuse the tension that way by misdirection, they kind of just get like quietly kind of they're not relevant anymore, so they kind of just slide out. This doesn't necessarily work every time, but it works better than confronting the aggressor, because the aggressor is looking for a fight, and the way to diffuse a fight is not to fight back. It's to create that kind of cold but firm resistance. And one of my other riffs is that narcissistic PR works because we can't shut up about it. This idea that news articles are bad on purpose to make you click. They get signal boosts from people saying, oh my god, this is terrible, look at how terrible this is. We should not be doing that. Like, doing that is, it's the same thing as like, just you have to be mindful of what you are propagating in the world. And I just so when I talked about these things like 10 years ago, I was being this really naive, really idealistic person that it would be easy for somebody else to say, what the fuck do you know? Like, you're just some kid and you're just saying some shit, and it did, like, you have no proof. But in the years since, I've been doing this for years and years, and like, over the years, I've accumulated allies and friends and people who agree with me. And if you follow me on Twitter, for example, like, I'm kind of known on Twitter for having this healthy bubble of like space where people are constructive and nourishing and supportive. And it isn't, like, I used to worry, like, is that like a echo chamber? Is that like a filter bubble where I am insulating myself away from the real reality, which is chaos? And I have thought about this very hard for very long, and I've come to believe that, first of all, it's kind of a you could say it's an echo chamber, but it's a very contextual one. Everybody who participates in that echo chamber also then participates in their own life, and it's not like they're shielded from reality. They do participate in reality. And so the way I describe it is, it's like, imagine you have a house party where it's like just a very noisy, loud, messy house party. People are having fun, but they're also, it's just chaos. And then you have, like, either you step outside or you go upstairs to the bedroom and you talk with a couple of friends, maybe, hey, like, and you corroborate your findings. You're like, hey, the stuff that's going on downstairs, like, is the party going well? Like, am I being too sensitive if I think that it's kind of getting a bit rowdy? And then, like, you get this space to think, and having a protected space to think is, like, again, we say safe spaces like it's a bad thing, and it's a safe space is only bad if it's coddling you, if it's hiding the world from you and it's preventing you from living in the world, and it's kind of like this trap, this jail that you construct for yourself and you don't get out of. But like, now I think of it as, like, it's almost like a athletes, professional athletes, they need to rest between their intense workouts and their public performance. So as long as you're still engaging in public, which I do, I think that having safe spaces, whatever words you want to use, having walled gardens, having protected spaces, private spaces, is healthy. And I think we all intuitively understand this, which is why we have locks on our doors at home, right? It's not that you don't trust the world. I mean, it could be, but the point of having locks on your doors is so that you can have privacy and you have a space where you can think for yourself, and your kind of novel and tentative thoughts, you have time to workshop them and experiment with them before you present them to the world for greater scrutiny, right? And all right, so we're at 30 minutes, and those are kind of my general thoughts on public life. I feel that, I want to invite more people to consider that being public individuals is something that they could be doing. I don't want to pressure anybody into doing it if they don't feel like doing it, because it is a pretty chaotic life. You will be questioned, you will be insulted and attacked, and you have to kind of like build up courage for that, and you have to be able to preempt, and you have to be able to respond to those things in a equanimity in a magnanimous way, right? Like it's not easy being a public figure and remaining kind of psychologically healthy. I think you can see that there are quite a few public figures who started out pretty healthy, and then it's clear that being public individuals drove them slightly mad, right? Like it's not natural for humans to deal with this, and people are not good at dealing with it. I am, still kind of at the early stages of my journey on this. I don't think I desire celebrity per se. I do think that fame for its own sake is dangerous. Like, I'm very sensitive to when people try to pedestalize me and say overly nice things about me, because I think that's unhealthy for me and it's unhealthy for them. What I really want is to engage with as many intelligent, thoughtful individuals as I can around the world. And, I'm not special. I'm just some guy. I do have a fairly unique background and perspective on these things that allows me to observe things that other people might not be able to observe. It allows me to feel comfortable doing things that might make other people uncomfortable. But fundamentally, I'm just a guy. I'm not divine. I'm not special. I'm not superhuman or whatever. I'm just a person. And why am I even talking about this? I want to invite, and so there's this kind of spectrum, right? And I guess I want to invite people to consider that you can be a force for good in the spaces that you already inhabit without necessarily becoming like a very, very public figure, right? So even at work or amongst your friends, like you can make the effort to talk to people privately even, right? And just ask them how they're doing. And you can kind of develop, like, so if you have a group chat with 20 people, and it is what it is, whether it's good or bad. Like you can take the time to kind of chat up each person privately, individually, from time to time, to just get a sense of what their thoughts are, and then you accumulate this perspective so you don't just see what you see, you get a sense of what everybody else around you sees, and then you may find that, hey, actually everybody is kind of wanting something that is not being reflected in the central public, and public in the sense of this group chat, right? It's not being reflected there. And then, you can build a coalition, you can talk to a couple of other people and say, hey, if I did this, like, would you support me on it? And then they'll be like, yeah. And then, you can make things better by talking to people, getting their perspectives, getting their input, and making sense of the space that you share. So, it's kind of an architecture problem. It's kind of a communications problem. But, like, there's infinite opportunity in this, And I've said sometimes that if I could solve any problem in the world, it would be human collaboration and human coordination. Because it's like wishing for more wishes. The better we are at coordinating, the more we can solve problems that seem intractable because it's not possible for any one person to do it on their own. Done, right? Have a good day. I hope you all are well. Thanks for listening.